Hello, welcome back to another weekend reading vlog. I'm so excited to, I think, do the first vlog of the new year. I don't think I've done one yet. I have tried and been picking up my camera and I just have had no inspiration, no will to film other than like sit down videos, but we're finally going to vlog. So right now I am in the middle of Enemy of My Dreams by Jenny Williamson. This comes out on February 4th. I'm so excited about this. If you were into romantasy with settings that you know, so this one's set in the Roman Empire towards the end of it, if you will. So we have Julia, who is a princess. Her brother has just become the Emperor of Rome, and he's a 17-year-old little tyrant. She can't stand him. Think if Joffrey had a little less audacity, I would give that to her brother, Honorius, spelled like honor, I-O-U-S, Honorius. Can't stand him. Can't wait to see his demise. And then there's Alaric, who is king of the Goths. Alaric's land has been stripped from him by the Romans. It's a age-old story, if you will, of colonialism and nonsense. And he's fighting to get it back. He and Julia run into each other a couple of times before they realize who each other are. And in the evening when they realize who each other are, tensions are high because her brother is hosting Alaric and attempts to get him to offer his military prowess and group of bandits, if you will, to the Romans. But Alaric refuses to give his people to the Romans, and knowing that it would mean enslavement and whatever they're offering is not really worth it. And over the course of the dinner, someone tries to poison Honorius and they think it's Alaric, so everyone's up in arms, ready to slit his throat. And Julia comes up with this quick, like, kind of diversion and ends up getting kidnapped by him, but it was all by her choice. Okay, this is like the first, 15% of the book. And then we are off and popping from there, okay? She and this man, they, hate to love each other. You know what I mean? Like, they can't really stand each other, but the tension is there. There's simmering, smoldering looks. There's quick wit, banter. He'll say something to hurt her feelings, and then he immediately feels like a piece of shit. I love it. She's endearing his whole squad to her, which he hates because he's like, I need to run these men. But Julia is very much running these men. It's a great time. I'm 40% in right now. Stuff is, it's on and popping. We're having a good time. So I will explain further when I do a reading update. And then I went to Barnes & Noble today. And I went looking for Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonam-Young because yesterday I was on TikTok and I saw a couple people say, I went to Barnes & Noble and guess what they had out already, because this comes out on Tuesday. And it's not super uncommon for things like this to come out a little early if Barnes & Noble receives them, like they'll put them out. But I wasn't really expecting this. I thought this might be a title that would have an embargo on it, which means that they have a given release date that they're forced to put the books out for sale on. So, like, example, Onyx Storm came out last Tuesday. There was no way, for the most part, that they were going to sell those early. I know it happened at a couple stores where they put it out on Monday night or something. Before the midnight release parties, not that, but it was actually out. And the rest of it seemed to be employee theft kind of things. But generally speaking, for a lot of these, a premiere title, if you will, something that's highly anticipated, it usually will not hit the shelves early, but this did. I was talking to the girl at Barnes & Noble and she's like, there were no embargo stickers on either one of these, and we put them out because we knew the girls were looking for them. And thank you. And then Unloved by Peyton Corin, which I have read and loved, and I think waxed poetic about in a vlog in the fall. I'm due for a reread. I cannot wait. This book is so thick in comparison to Out of the Woods. Look how, half. It's half almost. It's wild. This is only 308 pages of story, and then there's a couple pages of epilogue. I'm going to fly through this. I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try and savor it, but knowing Hannah Bonam-Young, because I tried that with Out on a Limb, and I read it in a day and a half. And that was me savoring it, because if I wasn't, I would have read it all in one day. And I have a feeling I'm just going to read this all in one day. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and annotate as I go. I'm so excited. I haven't done a book where I've just physically read it and had no e-copy before. Not say I shouldn't say I haven't had it before. In a long time. And so I'm excited to have that experience with this. So we're following Sarah and Caleb, who we met in Out on a Limb. Sarah and Wynn are childhood best friends. They were raised together. And so we meet them in that book. And in that story, we kind of see that Sarah doesn't really have a ton going on. She'll be doing things here and there, but I don't think she has a job. Her and Caleb don't have kids, and that's by choice, and that's totally fine. But you can tell that, because she doesn't have something concrete to constantly fill her time with, it's not surprising that in this story, we're finding that Sarah is feeling kind of lost. She's trying to find something to not only sink her time in, but to feel some value from. And she's really struggling with that. And Caleb seems to have no earthly idea that his wife is struggling. They are high school sweethearts, have been together for the longest time. They got married right out of high school. I think they got together in middle school. It was mentioned in the first book. And Sarah just kind of is starting to wonder, like, who am I without Caleb? Because Caleb also is now wealthy. Like, they both are because of the work that he has done. And so she's like, I'm a rich little housewife and I don't have anything fulfilling going on, which is really hard for her. But she loves her husband desperately. He loves her so much. The man would do anything for her. And he has no idea how much they're struggling. So they go out on this wilderness retreat that's meant to help couples reconnect. And it's funny because you don't think of Sarah in woods. It's not a thing that math isn't mathing, but that's what's happening. And yeah, so a little bit of a marriage in crisis moment. I'm very excited. I have seen some quotes promoting this book on Instagram that have brought me to my knees. I'm ready to have my feelings hurt. I'm ready to giggle and kick my little feet. I'm ready for Caleb to say the dirtiest things to Sarah because I know that's going to happen. I'm very excited. This is going to be so heartwarming. I just know it. So that is what we're reading this weekend. Okay? A little romantasy, a little contemporary romance. We're going to have a good time. So let's get into it. Hello, little afternoon update. I am 60-ish% into Enemy of My Dreams. I have been listening to the audiobook through the NetGalley app and just playing games on my phone because it's just been a good time. I'm loving this so far. I love a romantasy that involves like a journey, and they're going through this like wooded area and are trying to escape the Roman guards and army that her brother has sent after them. And there have been some battles, and we've gone to this village of this woman that I forgot the guy's name, the MMC, but he's been there before. He has been with this woman before, and Julia was so jealous. And he's like, no, I haven't been with a woman since I've been here. I only have eyes for you. And she doesn't really believe him, and they kind of go back and forth, but you can feel the tension in them building to like a higher level. And I think she's kind of already in love with him, which feels a little insta-lovey, but also not, because she has spent so much of her life with men just like fawning all over her, but not valuing her at all. So it started with her dad being so proud of her and thinking it fun that she could play this game that's like a war conceptual game. And it was all fun and games of her playing against his generals and like giving them a rough time until she would actively beat her brother in the game. And because he was going to become emperor one day, it wasn't cool that she was beating him in front of the generals. So her dad like made her stop playing, and he would make comments about how he was proud of her because how beautiful she was becoming and had nothing to do with her mind or how smart she was, which really hurt her. And would hurt me also, honestly, if you told me that the only reason you're proud of me is because I'm hot, like that's fucking weird. That would make me really sad too. And then obviously her brother treats her like shit, and the men around the palace are just amenable to her because of her stature and her role, but also because she is beautiful. And so she's really taken with Alaric because he sees her, and she surprises him regularly. He loves the way she keeps him on his toes, even if it annoys him in the moment sometimes. And the way he has become just so enamored with making sure her well-being is like that she's taken care of, but also watching her deal with like little conflicts in the camp and things, and like watching her just settle it on her own. It's very like, that's my girl energy, and I love it. So we're having a very, very good time. I think this is a really good story for anyone who's wanting to get into romantasy but doesn't love the idea of having to learn like a new world and magic system. Because this is set in like Roman times, it's just very like swords, horseback riding, battles here and there. Like it's things that we're pretty familiar with in our own world as far as like history goes. So there's less of a barrier of entry, I think, in getting into the story, and it just moves so quickly. I can't believe I'm 60% in already. Like, it's going so fast. So I'm gonna go enjoy the sunshine outside. It's like almost 60 degrees, which is weird considering it's been like 30 for the last 2 weeks, but I'm gonna take it. If January wants to give me a taste of spring, I'm gonna let it because I need some warmth. So I'm gonna go take a little stroll outdoors, take my pup with me, and listen to more of Enemy of My Dreams. You'll do anything I say, won't you? This man doesn't stand a chance. Because you're mine. I'd burn the world for you. Oh, she has it wrapped around her little finger. Hello friends, it is like 5:30 now, and I just finished Enemy of My Dreams. I will say the last like quarter kind of dragged, like that, you know, that third act conflict messiness of fantasy novels. The thing I struggle with sometimes with romantasy novels in particular is that they will have a conflict that is both driven by the overall fantasy plot and a romantic bungle as well. So you'll get conflicts in both, which happened in this book, and I'm not mad at them. Like I'm not one of those people who is anti third act breakup conflict whatever, but I am anti it feeling like it took 150 pages to resolve. So much happened to Julia in the last 30% of the book, and it just kept coming and coming and coming to the point where I was looking at the time on the audio and I was like, are we going to reach a resolution in this book, or am I going to get left on a cliffhanger? But we did get to a resolution, and it was one that, for the most part, made sense. But the one thing I struggle with is the conflict between her and... Why did I just forget this man's name? As if I haven't been reading it for hundreds of pages today. Alaric. The conflict she had with Alaric was something that made sense for the storyline. It is technically, I guess, a miscommunication, but given what was happening in the moment, there's not really a way for them to communicate. And because their relationship had only been, I'll call it solid and true, for such a short amount of time, the conflict made perfect sense, right? Because if this was somebody who she had been with since the beginning of the book, strong relationship, they know who each other is, like, to their core, the conflict that happens would have still maybe been a conflict, but it would have been a blip. Like, the reaction wouldn't have been so big. But because it was such a short, condensed amount of time, it was a big and honestly, like, reaction that made sense. But then to get back to where they are and they're good again is, to me, felt like kind of a big leap. Kind of. I don't know. I had a very good time with 75% of this book. So I think I'm probably going to land on a 4-star just because that final execution just felt like a lot to me. Like, I felt like we took such a long road to get back to them being in like a decent spot. I don't know if we're getting a second book. I think this is a debut. I'm not 100% sure. So I'm going to look into that to see if we're getting a second book. Because there's definitely a conflict that's happening at the end that could lead into a second book. But it's also, because it's based on Roman history, it's very easy to say, like, oh, well, it's just this thing that happens in history, and so it doesn't need another book. I'm just not sure where we're going with that. But I would be down to read a second book, for sure. For sure. I really enjoyed how throughout the whole book, Julia knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. And I love that for the most part, Alaric was very much into that. And he was ready and willing to help her do what she wanted. I think the one thing I really struggled with, or not so much struggled with, but was like annoying to watch but made sense for the time, is his need to protect her to the point where like she can't protect herself even though she wants to. Okay. So I would be interested in seeing a second book where she gets to be the boss ass bitch that she is, and instead of him standing in front of her trying to protect her, he just stands beside her, you know? Lets him reinforce her spine, if you will, versus trying to be her shield. So good time, good vibes. It comes out on February 4th. I would recommend the audio. I actually really enjoyed it. I've had such hit or miss experience with the NetGalley app for audiobooks, but the actual sound quality of this was very good. I really liked the narration. It was a solid time. So I'm going to feed my doggo because she is looking at me like, where's my dinner? So I'm going to get her fed. And then I think I'm going to take a reading break for the evening. I want to write up a pro cons list of my Kobo and film a, hey, I've had my Kobo for a month video. So I think what I'm going to do is spend my evening outlining that and then maybe film that in the morning. And my gift to myself for editing and uploading that will be reading Out of the Woods. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. I just spent the last hour attempting to film a YouTube video about my Kobo versus my Kindle, and I realized I can't just do that off the cuff. Like, that's a situation that needs me to sit down. I need notes. I need things like that. I said last night I was going to do that. I did not do that. I laid on the couch and I watched House for several hours and just dissociated, and it was completely unnecessary. Today, I think what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to not work on the channel at all other than this vlog. I'm going to go run to Chipotle because I would really like that for lunch. And then we're going to start Out of the Woods because I think Sarah and Caleb could fix me right now. I really think they could. I've got a really busy work week ahead of me, and I'm already feeling the Sunday scaries, even though it's like 11:45 in the morning, which is too early to feel the scaries. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go get some lunch. We're going to come back. I'm going to read the first, let's call it, okay, 75 pages is the middle of a chapter. I'm going to read up till chapter 6. Because that's page 77, close enough, and I will let you know how I feel after the first 6 chapters. Hi, I have finished the first 6 chapters of Out of the Woods, and I already have this like heavy but hopeful feeling in my heart in 76 pages because only Hannah Bonam-Young can do that to you. Sweet Caleb, he's so clueless. He has no idea how much his wife is struggling, and he also has no idea how hurtful some of the things he says to her are. And it's not like an intentional, like he's trying to be mean. Although during the fundraiser scene, he did say a couple of things that were they were a little mean. He did apologize kind of in the moment, but they have agreed to go on the wilderness retreat. Actually, it was a recommendation from Wynn. Wynn is a lifeguard in the previous book for like some of it until she gets like too pregnant to do that. And she mentions that one of her old coworkers or bosses is the one who started this wilderness retreat, and that she and Bo and Wynn were gonna go, but they just like never really had time, and their camp is opening soon, and so she offers her spot to Sarah for her and Caleb to go and maybe get over this rut that has been started from the night of the fundraiser, because it's been a literal month and she and Caleb have said like 5 words to each other. They're no longer physically intimate. They're basically roommates at this point who share a bed. And so Sarah is reluctant to ask Caleb for a number of reasons, but she does, and he immediately agrees because he's Caleb and he'll do anything for her. But he also says things like, the chapter I just read, they're sitting in the car, well, the second to last chapter, I'll explain that in a second, but they're sitting in the car about to go meet with the group. Like, they're looking at each other in the car, and they're kind of having a moment. She goes, hi, and he goes, hi, baby, I want to say before we start that I love you, and I'm glad we're here. And she just kind of looks at him like, because he just says it with such sincerity and like an intentionality for her to hear how much he loves her, because she talks about how they say it every day to each other, like through their routines, and I think even through this fight, but it's been more of a like flippant, like, okay, love you, like, and like you leave the room or you go to work or whatever. But this was like just so intentional. But then he goes, if this is what you need to get out of your rut, then I'm happy to do it. Team Linwood, right? And she goes, and there it is, reality crashing in once again. And he goes, no, like she doesn't say anything. She just kind of looks down and like disconnects from him for a second. And she goes, this isn't just for me, Kay. This is supposed to be for both of us, to learn, to communicate better, to look inward, to reconnect. And he goes, right, of course, yeah, I know. And she goes, okay, but you said it kind of like to make it all about me, like I'm the broken cog in the otherwise functioning machine. And he's like, I didn't mean it like that. You know that. And he does that a lot, where he'll say like he doesn't mean something in a particular way. And he often doesn't, but he'll throw in like a you know that, as if to like, it inherently diminishes her feelings, even if it's like he truly didn't mean to make her feel that way, but he doesn't realize that that's what he says. So she goes, I'm telling you how it felt to hear you say, we were here to get out of my rut. She goes, I don't know what you meant by it, but I do know how it made me feel. And he goes, okay, well, sorry then. I only meant that it was your idea to come, and I'm happy to do it, and I'm only trying to have a nice moment before we're going. She's like, right. But she goes, I'm grateful that you agreed to come, and that you want me to feel better. But I also need to know you're receptive to this experience and what it can give you too. And I just think that that's such a great example of what can happen between two people who have known each other for so long. And you know so much the heart and intention of the person, but that doesn't mean that things that they do aren't hurtful sometimes. And sometimes you need to be reminded that you need to spell out for them why it's hurtful. Because the moment she explains to him how his response made her feel, like he's immediately apologetic and like sincere about it. But he wouldn't have known otherwise without her saying something. We're also getting lots of flashbacks to them in high school, because they met in, I think, 9th grade. So each chapter, it's like one chapter of present, one chapter past, like back and forth, back and forth. The last chapter I just read is her coming home to tell her mom that she's being entered into a writing contest. And she's so excited, but her mom is clearly deteriorating so much. Her mom has ALS. And we knew Out on a Limb that Sarah's mom passed away when she and Wynn were really young, but we didn't really know from what. We just knew that like she had been sick for a while and that it was a hard thing that neither of them really liked to talk about. And so we're getting to see like the nitty-gritty details of watching your parent deteriorate. And the thing that makes it like extra sad is that Sarah doesn't know her dad. So when she loses her mom eventually, like she's just lost the only parent she's ever had. And even though Wynn's mom is basically like her mom extended, because Wynn's mom and Sarah's mom met each other. I don't know if they went to high school together or if they met each other just after, but they both essentially were teen pregnancies, got pregnant at, I think, 18, had their kids at 19, something like that. And so they immediately essentially move in together. They raise their girls together, and the girls are together literally from birth to 18 years old in the same home together. So she obviously has a really close relationship with Wynn's mom, because Wynn's mom also raised her. But there's something just inherently so hard about losing the only person that you're like blood connected to and who raised you, you know? So it's really tough, but it's super gentle in the way that it's approaching all of these things. So it doesn't feel like you're getting hit with like a boulder. You know what I mean? It feels instead like you're being like politely crushed. So I'm really enjoying it so far. I need to take Dearest Frankie here, Outside, but she's staring at me, so I don't want to say it. And then when I get back, I will keep going. And then when I get probably to the 50% mark, I will update you again. But I'm ready for them to hurt my feelings. I know it's coming. This angle is kind of a choice, but we're going to live with it. I am 160-ish pages into Out of the Woods, which means I'm basically halfway through, and I'm just getting my feelings hurt at every page turn at this point, but I'm really enjoying it. There's something about the way that Hannah Bonam-Young writes insecurity and just the general tenderness of the human spirit that keeps me coming back, because these two are going through it. I don't even know if you could call it a miscommunication or just lack of communication at this point, but both of their feelings are actively being hurt basically at every chapter, and yet I'm rooting for it. I'm rooting for them to like tear down their walls and all the things that they're worried about and all the things that they think they're doing wrong or not doing wrong, and to just like get to the root of it, because I just know that the build up and the reward is going to be so sweet if they just do the work. And so that is very much what is happening right now. Sarah is going through it, okay? Our girl is struggling. She and Caleb just had this very public fight around the campfire after a day of a lot of emotion. And I don't want to put fault on anybody, but I feel like if Caleb had just listened for a little longer, he wouldn't have ended up with his feelings hurt and going to bed alone. But what are you gonna do? Oh God, this is so good. I keep wondering, like, do I finish it tonight? Do I wait and try and finish it tomorrow? But I can't stop reading. Oh God, it's just so good. It's just so good. So we're gonna keep going. I just want my babies to be okay. I know Sarah and Wynn might throw down when Sarah gets back from this trip. Like, bitch, what did you send me on? Because I would be so mad and like cursing my friend mentally as I'd lay there in the middle of this trip, because it's day 3 and they're not having a good time, but it is good for them. I finished this last night. I had to stay up and finish it. I had to. I was not feeling super great last night, and I just kind of knew it was going to be like a fitful sleep situation. And so I was like, you know what? Instead of saving this for Monday, just read it now. And I did, and I love them. I love them so much. It was so funny when I first realized that I was going to have to read this physically. I mean, by have to, I meant if I wanted to read it immediately, I needed to read it physically, which is a thing I don't typically do. I loved this experience so much that it made me go, I should read more romance books physically. Tabbing, I thought I was going to do it throughout the entire book. I didn't start doing it until the second half, which is comical to me. Ooh. Anyway, didn't start tabbing till the second half. Wish I had started in the first. Maybe I'll go back and highlight some more, but this was more about the sections I tabbed the most were, there were 2 kind of olive branch moments. Sarah comes back after having a talk with one of the people running the program, and I think Caleb just kind of knows that she's like really struggling, but he doesn't really know how to help her. And so she gets back to camp, and she gets back before the rest of the group. And so she's like, I'm going to go lay down. And he just leaves her folded clothes, her Kindle, and I think some flowers or something. And she's like, wow, something for comfort, something I love, and just like just a sweet gesture. And then she does something in return for him that honestly had me tearing up for a second, because all the things he said, I think she really needed, all the things she wrote to him, he really needed to hear. And then after that moment, it was just a bunch of all the dark blue tabs that I've used are for moments where one of them says something that just like absolutely devastated me. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a goddammit, I would cry if books made me cry kind of way. I sped through the second half. I was trying so hard not to speed through this, but this book is only like 312 pages. So like, you're gonna read it quickly. And she writes it in such a way that you don't want to leave them because you want to make sure they're okay. So naturally, you're going to read it all in one sitting, basically. I only stopped to take my dog out, and I had a couple of phone breaks. But for the most part, I read it from like 3 p.m. to 10:30 last night. So I don't know. I'm sad it's over. I love and hate that she tends to write duologies, if you will, or duologies is the wrong term, because to me that means that they're reliant on each other, and technically you can read this without reading Out on a Limb, but you absolutely shouldn't. You should read Out on a Limb first. But she writes her books in duos, and so that means that we're done with this world in theory. She could come back to it. I don't know how she would or why she would, other than maybe like, you know what would be really fun to me is getting the 4 of them, Winbo, Sarah, and Caleb, in a Christmas novella. I would love that. Like, just to revisit later. Both epilogues for the books were like 10 or 15 years ahead of time. And so I think it would be cool to get them in between where their stories end and the epilogues. So maybe around the like 6-year mark, maybe something like that, I think would be really great. So that's it for this weekend reading vlog. Thanks for being along for the ride with me. If you end up reading these books, please tell me in the comments. Would love to chat about them. If you are going to talk spoilers, make sure you put spoilers in big caps with exclamation points or other symbols or something so people know to avoid them. And with that being said, I will see you guys in another video soon.